Hi everyone, this is Koinzell here. So I finally have a Redhorn Stonethresher video ready for someone other than Itto, and that character is Noelle. Now the reason why I started with Noelle first is because Noelle is actually going to get a very nice buff from Goro, as well as Yunjin in the next version, and I do believe that will really improve her damage a lot. But I don't think it will be better than Itto. But there are certain scenarios, and I'll talk more about that when I eventually do a Noelle versus Itto comparison. But for now, let's focus on Noelle with Redhorn Stonethresher. Let's see how she performs with this weapon. And then I'll talk briefly about Whiteblind as well as Serpent Spine. And then following that, we will do a comparison of Redhorn Stonethresher versus Serpent Spine versus Whiteblind. Okay, so without further ado, right, I'm not going to go into detail about Redhorn Stonethresher. I've already done that several times in the Itto videos. So obviously it's a defense scaling weapon and it works very well for Noelle. So we'll go straight into this portion here. Because I have people asking me, I see comments asking me other stuff like the kind of basic stuff. So I'll just say again that all of my figures are always against 50% defense and 10% resistance, which is like versus a level 90 mob with a basic resistance of 10%. That's typically what most enemies will have. Okay, so this is how my math is done. And typically we do not just the damage figures, as you can see here, the N1, N2, N3, N4 attacks, the elemental burst, elemental skill, etc. We also put them all together into a rotation to calculate and compare. Okay, so before I start, right, I just want to say that all the damage figures here are calculated using 4-piece Husk and assumes that you wait 12 seconds off you to get the 4 stats before you start any combat or any challenge. C4 effect, Noelle's C4 effect has been included for the C5 figures onwards, because it is a very sizable amount. The 400% attack explosion from when her shield expires or ends, or breaks, sorry. Next point is that since Yunjin's and C2 plus Goro's burst duration is 12 seconds each, our C6 Noelle's burst extension can't really be utilized. So we will assume 11 seconds for Noelle's burst if we factor in Goro cast. That's about 11 seconds, which coincides with Itto's. So obviously Goro was designed to buff Itto, which is why Goro's burst or buff duration will match Itto's burst nicely with C2. Now, we want to use Noelle's burst mode normal attacks buffed by Goro and Yunjin each rotation, instead of using her burst normal attacks that are unbuffed, just because her burst duration has not ended. I hope that's clear, right? You want to set up a rotation where your Noelle, while your Noelle's burst may last longer than Yunjin and Goro's burst, we should set it up such that the Noelle should always be doing attacks while buffed by Goro and Yunjin. That's what we should target. Now, Yunjin's buffs are not included yet. I will do it in a separate video focusing on Yunjin. All rotations here assume enough ER for 100% burst uptime. It's typically about 130% ER in a 3S dual comp. With C6 Goro and Redhorn, Noelle can target 100% CR as well, but you need really good artifact rolls. So if it's not the case, then 70% CR is fine. In fact, on my Noelle right now with a Serpent Spine, I'm hitting like 76 or 77 CR. A bit higher than I want, but it's fine. So these are the damage figures for Noelle with Redhorn Stonethresher. It's actually pretty good. Definitely not as high as Itto, but it's pretty good. Okay. For reference, right, a C0 R1 Itto does about 535k if I didn't remember wrongly. So you see here, there's no scenario where her damage is higher than 535k. But again, I will do a more detailed comparison of Noelle versus Itto. and we probably want to do that only after Yunjin's buffs are included. Weapon refinement comparison. Now this is something that makes sense to compare because we are talking about Redhorn Stonethresher, a new weapon. So R1 to R5 is about 18 to 25% from this section here. I'm not including the figures without Joe residence because you would use Noelle with other Joe characters if you're using her as a carry. Okay, so it's about 17 to 25%. Sorry, 17% to 25%. So kinda typical of a weapon going from R1 to R5. So this is a very quick guide and summary on Noelle with Redhorn Stonethresher, and I think it makes more sense when I compare it to other weapons. So let me just quickly talk about Whiteblind for Noelle. There's only one thing I really want to call out for Noelle, which is that you need to use 4 normal attacks prior to using Burst for Whiteblind, so as to stack the Whiteblind max stats before your Noelle's Burst snapshots. This is very detrimental to her DPS, especially compared against other weapons. In fact, my weapon comparison now would not even factor this in because I'm not dividing it per second yet. I'm just doing an overall damage comparison in their respective duration. But at least for Serpent Spine, this should be 19 seconds. Sorry, at least for Serpent Spine and Redhorn, they are 15 seconds. Noelle's is actually 19 seconds. That I will modify it later. But it doesn't matter because it will get factored in when I eventually do a DPS comparison in terms of against Itto. Next we have Serpent Spine. So another thing I want to call about Serpent Spine is that for Serpent Spine, right, because you have 20 seconds of SS on field waiting. Just highlight this and this and this. Oh my god. Okay, so basically you need to wait 32 seconds. Why? Because SS Serpent Spine requires you to be on field and wait 20 seconds to get your 5 stats, while 4-piece Husk requires you to be off field. So it's gonna be 20 plus 12 seconds of waiting, and you can't even say just put your character AFK and go somewhere, because you need to come back and you need to switch to another character for your 4-piece Husk. So yeah, this waiting time with active management per se is not fun. Doable, but not fun. But in Spiral Abyss, because you can't switch character before starting challenge, right? You can only get one of it. You either get max SS stats or you get max Husk stats. And obviously we should get max SS stats, because Husk stats you can gain it a lot faster in combat as opposed to SS. So effectively, you should start with your SS character as the first character in your Abyss. Gain your SS stats before you start the challenge, and unfortunately you will have to gain your Husk stats in combat. So what this means is that the damage figures that you see here will be lower in Spiral Abyss. But it's not too low, it's slightly worse in Spiral Abyss. Just bear that in mind. Okay, this is an important caveat. We shall talk about it later when we do the weapon comparison. So yeah, so this is the Serpent Spine. Some key points that I wanted to highlight about Serpent Spine. Now let's look at the Noelle weapon comparison, because I think that's the one that people are interested in, right? So you see here right off the bat there is a negative percentage figure, which means that Serpent Spine is better than Redhorn. Other than that, there's no other negative figures. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Now let's talk about Redhorn versus Serpent Spine. Very long session, yes. Now let's see. R5 Serpent Spine exceeds or outperforms R1 Redhorn if Noelle is at C6. Okay, Noelle is at C6. It's 9% better with C2 plus Goro and 1.4% better with C6 Goro, because the C6 Goro crit damage, Redhorn is able to skill better than Serpent Spine in that aspect. But Just because the relative comparison for C6 Goro is lower for Serpent Spine, it does not mean that you should not get C6 Goro. Okay, your C6 Goro figure is still going to be higher than the C2 plus figure, even on Serpent Spine. Just remember, don't get confused by this 1.4% and think that you don't need C2 Goro. Oh, sorry, don't be confused by this 1.4% think that you don't need C6 Goro. C6 Goro is still going to give you more damage than C2. In fact, it's quite a significant boost here. Not these percentages. These percentages are comparing this versus this. Okay? And this percentage compares this versus this, which is R1 Redhorn versus R5 SS. So the top half is R1 of the individual weapon, the bottom or second half is the R5 of each weapon. I hope that's clear. Basically, exactly the same format that I've been using to compare weapons since Kokomi. Yeah. So it's quite understandable why R5 SS will exceed R1 Redhorn. If you don't understand why, let me just quickly explain it. It's because Redhorn's effect only buffs her normal attacks, while Serpent Spine applies to her entire kit. So for reference, right, her normal attacks with R1 Redhorn in her burst, they actually hit harder than with R5 SS. But her elemental skill, her burst initial hit, and her C4 effect hits harder on R5 SS. That is the reason why R5 SS outperforms Redhorn in terms of the entire rotation, at least for Noelle's damage, without Injin's buffs. So I hope this is clear. Because if you see someone telling you that Redhorn does more damage, most likely that person is only looking at the normal attacks. And if that's the case, then yes, Redhorn does do more damage. But when you look at the entire kit, the entire rotation, Serpent Spine, R5 Serpent Spine can do better than R1 Redhorn. But there are caveats to that, and I'll talk about it. Another reason is that another reason why Serpent Spine is performing better than Redhorn is because we are deliberately shortening Noelle's normal attack duration to match Goro's and Yunjin's buff duration. If you use a normal attacks until the burst expires on C6, obviously R1 Redhorn will perform better because we are talking about a lot more normal attacks on Redhorn which do better damage than Serpent Spine normal attacks. But your overall damage on both weapons will be worse off if we don't match Goro's and Yunjin's buff duration. Okay, now let's talk about the caveats. So firstly, right, this is the same caveat that I talked about for Itto, but the impact to Noelle is not as big as Itto, since you don't lose attack speed bonus and you don't need to wire into charge attacks. So it's very, very simple. And more importantly, Goro gives you increased resistance interruption. Okay? No. Bear in mind that I'm not hitting on Serpent Spine. It's the best BP weapon. I have R5 too. But you need to take note of these things because it can cause this 1.4 to 9% difference to change. In fact, I did a quick calculation. Let's say if we assume that you lose one normal attack because of one dodge, which is a pretty fair assumption, time-wise. So one dodge will result in R1 Redhorn to be better than R5 SS with C6 Goro, i.e. that minus 1.4% now becomes a positive figure where Redhorn is better. If you have two dodges for C2 plus Goro, this 9% will also result in R1 Redhorn being better. And you will have to dodge even if Noelle has a shield, because her shield doesn't last that long. Her shield is not how shall I put it? Her shield is pretty strong, at least stronger than the other elements' shield, but still weaker than Zhongli. And you do want her shield to break for that 400% attack as well. Anyway, the shield duration wise, it kind of matches your burst anyway, even if we end it earlier. So that's fine. But just bear in mind that you do have such a caveat. Okay? A shield maybe, but wait, hang on. Okay, sorry about that. I had to go quickly double check my Noelle's skill information. So her shield will last in terms of duration. But if your shield breaks because of her attacks, you will need to dodge. So that's just bear that in mind. But honestly, the impact is not as huge as towards Itto. It's very, very manageable on Noelle. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the figures here have not included Yunjin's buffs, which are specific to normal attacks. Because with Noelle adding defense to attacks, Goro actually buffs more than just the normal attacks. But Yunjin is really just normal attacks. So once that's included, Redhorn will likely be better, but I'll do the math for that in a separate video. But I'm pretty sure Redhorn will be better if we have Yunjin's buffs thrown in. Now thirdly, attack speed buffs will also help include Noelle's DPS on Redhorn versus say SS, although they both improve, but Redhorn will receive a bigger boost in that sense. And C6 Yunjin does provide 12% attack speed buff. So I'll test this when we get Yunjin. And one last point, which is the point that I talked about when I first talked about Serpent Spine. In Spiral Abyss, you can only get SS stats from waiting and not 4-piece Husk stats, because you can't switch character before you start challenge. And you need to do it in order to get stats for both of them. So the SS figures will be worse than what we see here, and R1 Redhorn will likely outperform R5 SS by a little with C6 Goro. So if you talk about Spiral Abyss, if you talk about Yunjin's buffs throw in, and let's say I don't want to talk about the dodge, let's say that our shield lasts all the way, it didn't break, it didn't take so much damage that it broke, it's gonna last all the way, and I'm not affected by the dodge. Okay, let's be generous and say it's not affected by dodge, even though I put it here as a caveat so that you are aware of it too. If we exclude this, just looking at Yunjin's buffs plus the Spiral Abyss effect, right, I'm fairly confident that Redhorn will be better than Serpent Spine, provided you have Yunjin. There's a lot of investment involved, a lot of new investment involved here, right? Because it's 2 new characters. Not everyone will be able to get those C6 of those 2 new characters, which is why my conclusion later, you'll see that it's slightly different from what I'm trying to say here. But I'll talk more about that later. And more importantly, please remember that I have not included Yunjin's buff. Once it's included, Redhorn will likely be better. Okay, so basically, R5 SS is better than R1 Redhorn by 1.4%, at C6 Noelle with C6 Goro, 9% with C2 plus Goro. But given the caveats above, right, there are scenarios where R1 Redhorn can be better than R5 SS, but I would recommend to use R5 SS instead of spending wishes to get R1 Redhorn. But you have to be willing to accept the caveats above and also to wait 32 seconds before starting any combat. Now, if you intend to get Yunjin to use together with your Noelle, then I'll recommend to wait until I release the Yunjin math video before you pull for a Redhorn for Noelle. Okay, while I'm fairly confident that Redhorn will perform better than SS with Yunjin's buff throw-in, we also have to see how much better it is to justify spending your Primo gems to pull for Redhorn, right? Yeah. So that's why I say, yeah, please do wait until my math video is out for that. Now let's talk about Whiteblind. Whiteblind's figures are honestly kinda low. You see that the percentage difference are also quite huge. But that being said, right, it's still the best, how should I put it? It is still the best damage figures or the best F2P weapon for now. So let's see. Oh, sorry. This should not be included. Yep. Yeah, I just finished this analysis. That's why there's still some errors here and there, but it's just formatting or editing errors. So C6 Noelle with C2 plus Goro. R1 Redhorn is better by 26%, better than R5 Whiteblind. R1 SS is better than R5 Whiteblind by 19%. When you have C6 Goro in the same setup, R1 Redhorn will be better than R5 Whiteblind by 34%, while R1 SS is better than R5 Whiteblind by 18%. So the reason why it's 18% is because Redhorn and Whiteblind skills better with C6 Goro effect, because we have lower crit stats on Whiteblind and 100% CR on Redhorn. So one allows you to go beyond the 1-to-2 golden ratio, the other one, you just get a lot more since you have lower crit stats from crit. from C6 Guru's Creed. Now, the Whiteblind figures above have not even factored in the 4 seconds required to build up the Whiteblind stats before using Noelle's burst. Once that's included, the actual difference is going to be a lot bigger. So bear in mind that this percentage right now, if I factor in the 4 seconds required to build up the stats, it's going to be even bigger. So if you are somehow on the fence between Whiteblind and Serpent Spine, my recommendation is definitely go for Serpent Spine. For both Noelle and Itto. For either Noelle or Itto. Let's focus on Noelle here. So my personal choice when it comes to the weapon for Noelle, just bear in mind, before I share my personal choice, bear in mind, I've provided the figures objectively for your comparison and reference, as well as my analysis tool for your decision making. While I would recommend R5SS for most folks, especially considering the cost involved between the two weapons, for me personally, I may pull for R1 Redhorn if my Redhorn pulls for Itto are lucky, even before I do the Noelle Yunjin math. Because I really dislike waiting for 32 seconds. That's just way too long of a wait for me. I mean, 12 seconds on 4-piece Husk is okay. 20 seconds on Serpent Stats, still doable. 32 seconds is just too long. And I also don't like that I can't get a full buzz for Spiral Abyss. But that's me. Remember, that's me, my personal preference. And the most important factor about Yunjin buffing only normal attacks and likely boosting Redhorn to beyond Serpent Spine is another reason why I'm kinda attracted to Redhorn for Noelle. But if you're kinda on the fence like me, you can hold on pulling for Redhorn until I do the Yunjin math, yeah? At least now, without the Yunjin figures coming in, this is how the comparison looks like for Redhorn Stonethresher versus Serpent Spine versus Whiteblind. Okay, so I hope at least this shows you guys that Serpent Spine is still a very good weapon to use. R5 anyway. R5 Serpent Spine is still a very good weapon to use on Noelle, even if you're changing her to a 4-piece Husk. Because 4-piece Husk will give you more damage than a Bolite or Gladiator. But you do have a lot of waiting time involved. So there's that. Okay, so anyway, I hope this video has been helpful to you guys. Thanks everyone for watching. If you like the content, remember to like the video and click subscribe for more. And once we are done with all the Itto videos, right, I'll probably try to go to the... Well, we will resume either the Yunjin videos, or we'll start the Yunjin videos, or we'll resume the Shenhe videos. That's a lot of math in the pipeline. So yeah. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.